what looked like a second straight win, or actually a third straight win for the Clippers, ended up being another fourth quarter lapse that reminded me of the Laker game. Through three quarters, right there. Hadn't fully closed the door, though, and Milwaukee, without Giannis and Chris Middleton, hit the Clippers with a run that would cause them to lose probably one of their worst losses of the season. Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA and in my 19th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, where I went live to talk about both LA games on Monday night. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where I want you to let me know what were your biggest takeaways from this game. What was your biggest reason as to why the Clippers collapsed yet again? And we're going to be talking about all that, how much accountability and blame the Stars should have, everybody else, Ty Lue, and the decisions that we made at the end of the game, because this one should have been a sure thing. Really should have, without Giannis and Chris Middleton. Before we start talking about it, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. All right. Let's talk about this one. Second night of a back-to-back. Going into this game, we had actually won 4 straight on the second night of back-to-backs. And we had the news before the game, just a couple of hours before the game, that Giannis was warming up and he didn't feel very good. He was out with Achilles tendonitis, apparently. So get well soon, Giannis. But the second I heard that, I was like, we got to get this done. We got to win this game. Make it 2 out of 2. And what was supposed to be the toughest back-to-back, maybe of our entire season, playing at Minnesota and then at Milwaukee on consecutive nights, and we come away with 2 wins. And it did not end up being like that, but it wasn't a terrible start. And I thought one thing that was interesting about this game was that the starters were all guarding each other. Paul George was guarding Malik Beasley and vice versa, and Brook Lopez and Ivica Zubac. You had Terrence Mann and Damian Lillard, then Patrick Beverley and James Harden, and then who am I forgetting? Oh, Kawhi, of course. Kawhi and Jay Crowder. Patrick Beverley. Oh, God. It is so annoying when we play against Pat. I mean, he always makes it seem like it's the biggest game of his life. Although that's kind of how he was all the time. But when he plays against the Clippers now, for whatever reason, not whatever reason, he used to be one of us. He has so many pre-existing relationships on the team. You know, Paul George, Kawhi, Zoo, Harden. He even played with Russ. Ty Lue's been his coach. He's played with Terrence Mann. I mean, he's played with Amir Coffey. He's played with damn near our whole team. So it makes sense why he goes a little bit harder. And, of course, we didn't pay him. And we saw the way he felt to a degree. Even though he still shows love from time to time on his podcast, we saw how he felt when he exploded like they won the championship when he was in Minnesota. And he started switching onto Paul George. Like when I say switching, I don't mean switching on a possession. I mean starting out possessions guarding Paul George and Malik Beasley on Harden towards the end of that first quarter. And not going to lie, Paul got off to a pretty good start. 8 points in the first quarter. James Harden also was very solid in the first quarter. He ended up having 11 points. So between Paul George and James, we had 19 points in the first quarter. Lopez was in drop coverage. Zubac was in drop coverage. And, when you look at that starting lineup for the Bucks, it's pretty small. Malik Beasley, Damian Lillard, and Pat Bev all starting. But one thing they were doing to start the game, hitting some threes. You got one from Jay Crowder, you got one from Brooke Lopez, and 3 from Dame. The Bucks were 5 for 10 from 3 in the first quarter, but overall we led them 35-25 after 1. Kawhi played the entire first quarter, and he was the only one who did, and he was 2 for 3 with 4 points. We didn't shoot very much, and I gotta give the Bucks some credit. And I hate that I'm saying this, but in the last couple of games, they've been doing well with Glenn Rivers as coach, and their biggest problem this season was that their defense wasn't good. And what I saw in this game was a team from the jump that looks like they've been playing harder defense because it was team-wide. You know, their ball pressure, their ball denial at times, how in tune they were to whatever their scheme was. There was a difference. And, you know, defense is very largely effort. And when you flip that effort switch, it makes a huge difference. As a team, of course, big time. So, you know, they wanted Adrian Griffin out. It was very clear. Took a while for Glenn, but it seems like he's finally integrating himself. Now, Zubac, I thought in the first half was pretty quiet. When Daniel Tice came in, he was actually hedging on the pick and rolls, not dropping. But I think after that initial stretch where Zoo wasn't drop and Dame was kind of cooking us, Ty was basically like over that. And he was basically asking the centers to show every single time on Dame. Don't let him just come off for an open 3. Now, of course, this is the second game where we're missing Russell Westbrook, and Bones Highland came in, and he had 5 straight points to end the first quarter, including a buzzer beater where he went coast to coast, where he made the shot with 0.1 seconds left. So as far as Bones Highland, I mean, pretty quiet game in terms of the minutes, but remember, it's a true backup situation right now where he's playing whenever James Harden isn't, and Bones had 5 points for the game on 2 for 4 shooting in 11 minutes. And still solid. You know, Clippers go into the half up 55-48. So the Bucks were still kind of hanging around. And a large reason is because Damian Lillard had 19 points at halftime. I mean, he's a star. He's still a star. No doubt about it. 19 points for him. As far as Paul George and James Harden, Paul had 15 at halftime and James at 13. So those two were leading the way for the Clippers scoring-wise. As far as Bobby Portis, he caused us a bunch of problems throughout the night. He was hedging and recovering on the Bones screens when Bones is controlling the ball in the pick and roll, and then blitzing Paul George. But as I said, PG was really cooking in that second quarter. There was one time where he even told Norman Powell to go up to the wing to pass him the ball in the mid-post, and he scored on Pat Connaughton. It was awesome. But we were getting cooked by Bobby Portis throughout the game, and that would be foreshadowing to what would happen in the fourth quarter. Norm, he didn't have a very good game in this one. 2 for 8 from the field. It was not like the game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but defensively he was actually pretty active. Got a couple of steals and blocks. Let's see what he finished with in the game. 2 steals and a block, 6 points for Norm on 2 for 8 shooting. Zoo in the second half, and starting in the second quarter actually, started to show on Dame or basically blitz Dame. So we were like, let's just get the ball out of his hands. And that was allowing open threes for other guys, but it didn't fully take off till the fourth quarter. As far as the Clippers, James Harden, good throughout the game. First half, started from the first half, making plays, knocking down shots, had a floater or two. But the only annoying thing, one of the things that was kind of keeping the Bucks in the game, Pat Bev had 9 points at halftime, 2 for 5 from 3. So he was on pace for 18 points. He ended up finishing with 12. So he only made one more 3 the rest of the game. But it was a really big 3 to tie the game in the fourth. Now, in the third quarter, the Clippers actually went up by 15. It started with Kawhi Leonard hitting 2 threes from the top of the key. And also I thought he was playing great on-ball defense. One-on-one, hustling. There was that one time where Kawhi saved the ball for us or knocked it out of a Milwaukee Bucks player's body, and we got the ball back. That was just pure hustle. That was in the third quarter. Zoo started to get offensive rebounds, and when they started, Lopez was playing drop all night, but against Harden and Paul George, he was kind of in that high drop. So it was allowing them to make those pocket passes, put Zoo in that short roll, and I thought Zoo made some really good reads in that third quarter, and that is represented in the stat sheet because he had 3 assists. He played 6 minutes and 20 seconds in that third quarter, but he had 3 assists in that quarter alone, 4 in the game. Now, we were up by 15. Bucks made a little push towards the end of the third to cut it down to 8. Overall, Clippers won the third quarter 26-25. The fourth quarter, the Clippers lost 40-25. Doesn't it sound familiar? Sounds just like the Laker game. Clippers going into that Laker game, this is courtesy of Clipper beat writer Justin Russo, were 31-1 when they went into the fourth quarter with the lead this season. Now we've lost 2 in the last week when we had the lead going into the fourth. It started out with us missing 4 straight solid looks to begin the quarter. Norman Powell, little elbow kind of floater. Paul George, wide open 15-footer. James Harden, step back 3. But I'll tell you what really caused it, and I gotta give Glenn Rivers credit as much as I hate it. He went to a 2-3 zone, and the Clippers just kind of kept running pick and roll basketball. They generated open threes, and they didn't make them. They didn't really put somebody in the middle, besides a couple of possessions later in the game, and they didn't really get the ball inside the paint. And what was frustrating about it was the Bucks were over the limit for a while. You know, they committed, let's see how many fouls in the fourth quarter. 8 fouls in the fourth. So we had time and chances to go to the basket, and time again, you know, a zone keeps you away from the basket, but we kind of played into their hands. And in the fourth quarter, the Clippers were 35% from the field, 36% from 3, but 14 of their 20 shot attempts were threes. There you go. And that's what the Bucks wanted to do. They kept us outside. We ended up going cold. We still ended up generating some solid looks, but the ball movement wasn't that great. And that's really disappointing that against a zone, you don't move the ball very well. I'm going to get into the thick of that when we go to the Ty Lue segment of this episode. So please stick around for that. But coming up, going to be talking about the stars and what went so wrong in that fourth quarter. Because you can say whatever you want about the first 3 quarters, but the fourth quarter is where the Clippers completely collapsed. They allowed the Bucks to have a 10-0 run to begin it. And Bobby Portis and Damian Lillard just went ballistic. Dame had 10 points in the fourth. Portis had 14 in the fourth. And as for the Clippers, James Harden and Paul George shot well in the fourth. I would say James Harden played well. Paul had just a couple of inexcusable moments. But Paul had 11 points in the fourth. James had 10. They had 21 of our 25. So very similar to the first quarter. 21 of our 25 points in the fourth. Kawhi was 0 for 4. And we're going to talk about the zone and everything, and the stars in particular, coming up. This segment of Locked On Clippers is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might be even thinking about the same thing this week. I don't know if the Clippers are true championship contenders due to their age and being such a jump shooting team. It's been the same issue since we got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And James Harden against the elite defenses, I don't know if he's going to have much juice off the bounce. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. Clippers losing this one 113-106 against the Bucks. Get outscored 40-25 in the fourth quarter. So brutal. Let's go in more depth about this fourth, starting with who played in it. Amir Coffey, Norman Powell, and Paul George played the entire quarter. James Harden basically played the entire quarter, 11 minutes and 12 seconds. So Bones and him, Bones was in when James was out, and that was about it. They didn't share the court together. So the Bucks started the quarter on an 8-0 run, and something that was hurting us was we were basically blitzing Damian Lillard, getting the ball out of his hands, and the other guys were making threes. AJ Green, Bobby Portis, these guys were hitting. So when the Clippers were up 89-80, and the Clippers were not hitting on the offensive end. We were up 89-84. We take Zoo out with 8 minutes and 2 seconds left in the game. We put in Kawhi for the rest of the game. Now we have a lineup of Kawhi, James, Paul, Amir, and Norm. Amir and Norm at this point aren't even playing that well. But he tries to go without Zoo so we can switch everything. We start struggling to beat a zone. And part of that is not getting the ball to the middle of the floor. Not getting the ball in the middle of a zone then becomes a lot of swinging on the perimeter. And we try to, set a screen on the outside man at the top of the zone, get in, and then drive and kick. So it was basically very similar to what we do against man-to-man. And we just went cold from three. I mean, they had us take 14 out of our 20 shots from beyond the arc in that fourth quarter. And that was their goal. And I got to give Glenn Rivers and them credit. I do. It's unfortunate. We started missing. Kawhi went 0 for 4 in the fourth. Let's talk about Kawhi. He had a very good stretch in the third quarter defending and made those 2 threes from the top of the key. But 16 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, and a block. His defense was very good. And even guarded Dame a lot in this game as primary defender. And just 1 turnover. But 6 for 19 from the field. 2 for 8 from 3. 2 for 3 from the line. Including a miss in the fourth quarter in a close game when we were down 99 to 105. 100 to 105. It's not good enough. And Kawhi, I thought he wasn't good enough in the fourth quarter of that Laker game either. I thought through 3 quarters he was fine in this game, but not a good fourth quarter. Kawhi has really struggled. And then again, against the Wolves, he was awesome, player of the game, but in the fourth quarter he was a little suspect. He just hasn't been a good enough closer for the Clips. There's no other way I can put it. That was really disappointing. And then Paul George starts out the quarter by missing 2 free throws. Misses 3 in the quarter, 1 on a defensive 3-second violation that we needed. And then he throws that weak pass when the defense is loading up to James Harden, and James Harden doesn't catch the ball with 2 hands, and then they score and take the lead, and the crowd is roaring. These are the kind of momentum killers that everyone says Russ does, and to be honest, I think we actually missed Russ in this game. I think we missed a guy that could get to the basket because we consistently settled. Consistently. And the thing about Russ is he's going to bring the energy for 4 quarters. I don't think the Wolves game was one for Russ, but I think this one was. And James and Paul, I think they were still pretty good in the fourth. Mainly James. I thought James was good. Paul was okay. He still had that mistake and those missed free throws. They scored in the fourth. The other guys didn't. They scored 21 out of our 25 points. Paul was 3 for 5, 3 for 4 from 3 in the quarter. Although I remember one of those threes was in garbage time. And then James, he was looking like he was going to take us home. He hit a 3, got to the basket, got an and 1. But ultimately our offense against that zone was really bad, and we couldn't stop them. And what I felt was interesting was when we came out of the timeout, we were up, I believe, 96-93. Oh, so sorry. When Brook Lopez came back in, we were up 96-93. Pat Bev hit a 3 to tie the game, right? I thought the whole purpose of going small was to switch everything. But we started blitzing Dame. So I guess his thought process was, we're going to have more quickness out there to run them off the 3-point line and make them go to option C and D, That didn't work. They were making all their threes. This dude, AJ Green, pulled up from like 30. Bobby Portis was making turnarounds, contested. They were hitting everything and to close the game. 6 for 10 from 3 in the fourth. But the stars for the Clippers weren't good enough to close. There's nothing else I can say. Paul George was 10 for 17, 6 for 10 from 3, 29 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, and 2 steals. but he had 3 turnovers, and you know the killer, 3 for 7 from the foul line. That is unacceptable when you want to win a game. Just in general. James Harden, I think he was the best Clipper. 29 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 block. Still turned the ball over 3 times. 9 for 16 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, but 6 for 9 from the foul line. Still in the fourth quarter, again, dribbling way too much of the clock out before we get into stuff. And Kawhi, as I already mentioned, his stat line, just a very disappointing game from him. He hadn't had a bad shooting game since the Sacramento one. So they just needed to play better. But coming up, let's talk about what Ty Lue did and some of the decisions that he made, what he could have potentially done differently. It's going to be a good amount of stuff to talk about coming up. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. Shoot your shot on the Clippers winning the championship. Why not? FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Clippers losing this one in very disappointing fashion, 113-106 in Milwaukee, blowing a 15-point lead. We had a 74-59 advantage, and we lost it. 39-21 on the season for the Clips now, 18-13 on the road. We're 5-6 since the Grammy road trip. Oof. Amir Coffey had 4 points on 2 for 6 shooting in this one. Our bench didn't really give us much. 22 points overall. Norman Powell, 2 for 8, 1 for 6 from 3, just 6 points. Amir Coffey, 2 for 6 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3, 4 points. Terrence Mann only had 4 points, but that brings me to the first of Ty Lue's decisions. Terrence Mann didn't play at all in the fourth. He had 4 points and 3 rebounds and 1 assist on 1 for 4 shooting, 2 for 2 from the line. Amir Coffey only had 4 points as well and played 7 more minutes. Defensively, I don't think anybody did a good job on Dame, Terrence included. But I think as we're seeing time go on, and I always think this, because Amir always has these moments where he challenges Terrence and gets that conversation going about who's better. And you could argue he's having a better season, but I think Terrence is better. I think he's a better cutter. I think he makes better passes on the drive, better attacking closeouts. Although Amir's mid-range jumper is pretty solid attacking the closeout. It's been a little colder since post-All-Star break, but I just think Terrence has slightly better instincts and is a little more consistent. This season, maybe, you can argue no, but over the course of his Clipper career, he's been more consistent, and he's played in bigger moments. I don't think Terrence Mann not playing the fourth quarter is the reason we lost, but I think that's very questionable, and it reminds me of last year. He should not be sitting the entire fourth. Now, on the Zubac's decision to go small, I get where he was coming from because we were getting burned on the pick and roll, but why would we do that if we're not going to just switch everything and trust our one-on-one defense? If we're still going to blitz Dame, I get he wants to, he doesn't want Zoo closing out hard. But then go with Tice because we were just a little small. But then again, if the threes go in, we're not even having this conversation. My biggest issue is that against the zone, we can't just chuck threes. My bet would be to put Kawhi in the high post and just leave him there because you got to account for him. But here's the thing, right? When you don't have somebody in that dunker spot, which is right around the basket, you don't get any of that high-low action. So let's say Brook Lopez is the bottom of the zone, right? And Kawhi gets the ball at the foul line. Now Brook Lopez has to come respect Kawhi and come out and guard him. That leaves somebody open right under the basket. If someone sinks from the wing, then that leaves the corner open. But now you're playing inside-outside basketball, right? Pau Gasol and Andrew Bynum, because I got the pleasure of watching them here in LA for a while. They had great big-to-big passing. Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan were fantastic big-to-big passing. But I remember specifically seeing them teams go zone sometimes against that Laker team, and they would destroy them because Pau could just turn and shoot. So having Kawhi in that high post or Paul, I think would be the best bet. I just think we still generated good looks, but it took too long to get into everything again. And that's, I think, on James Harden to a large degree. But that being said, I would probably blame him the least of any player for this loss. Ty Lue, I mean, he's going to get crushed in these comments. I'm already knowing. And he should definitely get some heat. I mean, that was very questionable not to play Terrence at all. I don't think that the zone thing, that shouldn't be large. I think for whatever reason, every team in the league does this stuff. I don't know if that's the coaching, that every team's coach is like that, or the players just forget what they've done in youth basketball their whole lives or growing up. I mean, a lot of these guys didn't play that long in college, though, and you see zones a ton in college. But it's just ludicrous to me that you don't put somebody in the middle of your zone. And then when we did, we failed to capitalize on one-on-one matchups and missed a lot of threes. The Bucks were clutch. We just got to be clutch. Sometimes it just comes down to that. But yeah, as far as Ty, should he have put Zoo back in the game? Probably. Probably because he was starting to put his imprint on the game in the third quarter. A couple offensive rebounds, making really solid reads in that short roll. So, questionable decisions indeed. But I definitely blame the Stars more. It's a players' league. Paul George makes a couple free throws, changes the momentum of things. But you got to give the Bucks credit too. The other guys were just making shots. AJ Green pulled up in the parking lot. And Bobby Portis just went nuclear. But yeah, I'm surprised we didn't go with Tice. He wanted the closeout speed. But those guys didn't pay. Because here's the thing. When you have Norm and James out there, not to say that they had bad defensive games at all, but that's not the strongest defensive lineup when you have those two out there. You're banking on the offense. James brought it in that fourth. Norm, not so much. But I still think James, at the same time, he wasn't flawless either, You got to be able to get into our offense a little quicker, And Ty called that out after the game. Not specifically on James, but he's our point guard right now without, point guard largely. No Russ. He's already our main point guard this season, but I'm saying without Russ, that's even more responsibility for him now. He's probably going to be playing even more minutes, which we wanted him to play a little bit less, winding down into the playoffs. And we've got a tough schedule in March, a lot of back-to-backs from what I remember. And this loss is terrible. It really is. Now, I'm really curious to see your guys' comments about Ty Lue, about the Stars and what they did, and just another fourth quarter collapse because, it was disappointing. Is there any stat line that I'm forgetting? Zubats, 6 points, 11 rebounds, 4 of those offensive, 4 assists, 2 turnovers on 2 for 4 shooting in 24 minutes. 6 and 11 in 24 minutes is pretty good. But, another thing, we don't go to Zoo at all in terms of getting him the ball close to the basket and having him try to create some offense. And that really, in my opinion, hurts. Because we struggle to create easy baskets. And in this game, the Bucks are over the limit for a while, and we're not getting to the rim. We're not. Brook Lopez blocked Kawhi once when he tried to attack that zone. Because there was that time where Brook Lopez came out and picked up Kawhi Leonard when Kawhi got the ball in that high post. Kawhi tried to drive at a moment of tunnel vision, got blocked. And that was just a great defensive play. But I don't like how we just went away from that. It is what it is. I don't even know what to say. Clippers lose at 113-106. Damian Lillard dropped 41. Pat Bev was talking a whole lot of mess. Bobby Portis had 28 and 16. And yeah, we'd come up with the L. Let me know what you think, though. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. The good news is OKC lost to the Lakers. So they took an L. That keeps us still in position to potentially get that 1 seed. Minnesota and OKC now have 19 losses, but so does Denver. Clippers have 21. So still just 2 back in the loss column and the number 1 seed. So take that for what it's worth. The age-old proverb continues, go Clippers.